Hi, I'm Colleen, and this is my June wrap-up. Instead of giving you a big intro, we're just going to get into it because it's summer and trying to keep all my kids quiet while I film is basically impossible. I'm also filming in the afternoon for the first time, so I have this weird band of sunlight right here that I don't usually get. There's not a ghost. It's just the angle of the sun is different in this room than it usually is. June was a fantastic reading month for me. I had a ton of writing to get done, so I told myself I wasn't going to read that much. So I kept the number of books low for me to read, but I read 3 5-star books, 2 4.5-star books, and 1 3.75-star book, which I think is the highest rated month I've ever done. We're going to start with romance. I read 2 romances this month, and the first one was The Bride Goes Rogue by Joanna Shupe. This is the 3rd book in the Fifth Avenue Rebels series, and I have absolutely adored this series. So in this one, our heroine is Catherine Delafield, and she's been betrothed to Preston Clark, even though they never really had a relationship or a courtship. Their dads set it up, and she's been waiting for about a year for him to approach her and tell her, let's plan our wedding or whatever. So finally she gets tired of waiting, and she just shows up at his office and is like, we need to start planning our wedding. To which Preston says, I am not engaged to you. I did not propose to you. Our dads put this together. I have no interest in marrying you. And Catherine's mortified. But she uses it as sort of a catalyst to turn her life around. And she decides she's going to have a lot of fun. So in comes Nell, her best friend, who is fantastic. And she's got the next books in the series, and I cannot wait to read her story. And she's like, well, how crazy do you want to go? And Catherine's like, I want to go real crazy. So they go to a masquerade ball, which I love this trope. I can't. I love the in disguise trope, falling in love while in disguise so much. So while at the masquerade, Preston comes in and he's basically just looking for a night of fun, and he finds this woman and they hook up and it's fantastic. And he can't stop thinking about her. So they have that one night that's fantastic, but they decide to meet. So he gives her an address of a random apartment. And when she shows up, they realize that they had actually hooked up with each other. And she's like, oh, I don't like you. You were mean. I never want to talk to you again. And he's like, that was you? That was you? So then we have this time where Preston's kind of falling in love with his ex-fiance and doesn't know what to do and can't stand seeing her out to dinner with other men. And it's fabulous. I love Joanna Shupe's books so much. I also love, she writes in the Gilded Age, which is the late 1800s. It's pre-World War I is the end point of it, but it takes place in America. She writes really realistic heroines. So Catherine is a woman who loves art, and she's starting a museum. And that's so cool to read about because it's actually a realistic career she could have at that time. She's wealthy and she's single, but she has this great art collection and she wants to be able to share it with the public. So, museum. It's fantastic. 5 stars. Read this entire series. You'll love it. I love it. Get it. The next romance I read was Always Practice Safe Hex by Juliette Cross. This is technically the 4th book in the Stay a Spell series. There's a Christmas collection of novellas that's also in there, but this is the 4th in the series. And this book was also a 5-star read. So in this one, we follow Livy, who is one of the Savoy sisters who we've been following throughout the series, and her basically soulmate, Gareth, who's a Grimm. Now, this is such a testament to what an amazing writer Juliette Cross is, because this has 2 tropes that are usually kind of no-goes for me. It has rivals to lovers, which I don't really like that trope very much, and it also has a corporate office workplace romance feel. Another trope I don't usually read. But Juliette Cross is so fantastic that she made this book with 2 tropes I don't usually like a 5-star read. So basically, Livy and Gareth are in this competition to do, create a fundraising opportunity for something that affects supernatural people, because they're both supernaturals, and there's this whole supernatural community living in North America and around the world. They live in New Orleans. They both get picked to be on this team. They start by really not liking each other. They both think they have better ideas and that they should be in charge. But then, of course, that really quickly turns into insta-lust because they are really attracted to each other. And then we follow their relationship from there. This series is so much fun. All the sisters are a blast. So Livy it's a family of 6 girls. Her sisters are all in the series. They run a bar, so there's a lot of fun people who work at the bar that you've gotten to know. I just love these books so much because they're almost coming like a comfort read to me. Like, I can't wait to reread the entire series after I'm done with it. I would absolutely love for like Netflix or Prime or Hulu or someone to do this series, or HBO Max, because it's so good, and it definitely has that like community feel you need for a series that's gonna span several seasons, where you have these characters you get really invested in over time. The next one that's coming out is called Resting Witch Face, and it comes out in October, and I already cannot wait to read it. My next read in June was Siren Queen by Nghi. Oh my gosh. So this is a fantasy, and I'd almost classify it as historical fantasy because it takes place in California, in LA in particular, in like the 20s and 30s. So it's about like the beginning of Hollywood and how that entire industry got started, but with like a really big fantasy twist. So our narrator is Luli Wei, and she is Chinese American, and she wants to be a star. She's been obsessed with movies since she was very young. She's gotten some bit parts as like background characters in movies, and she makes a deal with the head of a studio, which is kind of like making a deal with the devil, to play parts for them. But she will not play maids. She will not play fainting flowers, and she won't use a fake accent. So it kind of narrows down the type of parts she'll play, but she ends up getting this amazing role, and it really defines her career. The cool part about this book is I really truly feel like Nghi developed like the mythology of Los Angeles. And I don't know how to explain it other than to tell you to read this book, because just the way she describes like the creation of these production companies, the contracts they have with their actors and actresses, there's so much magic. This thing is like dripping with magic. It also has queer love stories, more than one. It's not a romance, but the main character does have these relationships that you sort of follow until they're over, and none of them end horribly, so don't worry about that. If you love books with mythology retellings, really creative fantasy, definitely read The Siren Queen. I think this cemented that Nghi is an auto-buy for me because I really loved this book. My next read is in a genre I don't usually read, and it is The Hotel Nantucket by Elin Hilderbrand. This would be definitely like, it's billed as contemporary fiction, but it is a beach read. And I found myself at the beginning of June or end of May really wanting to read like a summer read, like a book that felt like summer. And I had come across this and thought that might be a good one. And then it was an add-on for Book of the Month. So I was like, oh, I'll grab it, definitely. And I'm really glad I did. This book has so many narrators. We follow a hotel that's very dilapidated and has been taken care of, and it's on Nantucket. And it gets a buyer who wants to basically like turn it around and get it to be like a 5-star hotel. There's this whole thing with this social media person who rates hotels, and they want to get, I can't remember what it's called. It's like 5 keys. That's what it is, 5 keys. And so we follow different narrators, the woman who's in charge of basically flipping the hotel, the people that work the front desk, the people that work in the kitchen, the ghost who haunts the hotel, which was really fun because, you know, I love fantasy. And it was a fun ghost narrator because it wasn't like a spooky ghost narrator. It was like kind of like a ditzy late teens narrator, which made it a blast. I flew through this book. If you are going on vacation, I would definitely recommend it. I also did finish this book and then immediately tell my husband we needed to somehow figure out how we could fund to go to Nantucket for the entire summer next year, to which he said the summer is the only nice time to live here, so that we're not leaving for an entire summer, which I agree with. But I gave this book 4.5 stars. I'm not going to go back and read Elin Hilderbrand's entire backlist, but I think I will probably read a book of hers a summer because it's just a really fun summer feel book. Next, I read one mystery, and it was The Murder of Mr Wickham by Claudia Gray, and this was a pretty fun, cozy mystery. Here's the premise. We are at the Knightley's house. So Mr. Knightley and Emma from the book Emma by Jane Austen are hosting a party at their house where everyone comes to stay for a month because, you know, it's the Regency and people did stuff. And the guests are the Wentworths, Captain Wentworth and Anne from Persuasion, the Darcys, Darcy and Elizabeth, and their son Jonathan from Pride and Prejudice, Colonel Brandon and Mary Ann from Sense and Sensibility, Edmund and Fanny from Mansfield Park, and then Juliette Tilney, who is Mr. Tilney and Catherine Morland's daughter from Northanger Abbey. They're all at this dinner one night, and Mr. Wickham comes in, and there's a bad storm going on. He basically asks for shelter. And slowly you figure out that he has wronged every single person there. So, of course, a few days later, because he hasn't been able to leave, he winds up dead. So Juliette Tilney and Jonathan Darcy, the Darcy's son, resolve to solve the murder. It was a pretty fun book. I will say it's kind of got a slow beginning for a mystery. Like, not a lot of action happens in the beginning because the author does a really good job of setting up all the characters and their personalities. As someone who has read all of Jane Austen, I didn't really feel like I need that setup because I pretty much was familiar with how everyone acted, but I will say that it does give readers who maybe don't know all of Jane Austen, maybe they only know Pride and Prejudice or something like that, a chance to really get to know the characters. I also think that Claudia Gray managed to redeem the character of Mary Bennet in the best way possible and gave Mary Bennet the best ending I've ever seen. I gave this book 3.75 stars. I enjoyed it. I definitely would recommend it to Jane Austen lovers, but other than that, it's like a pretty good mystery, but not one that's gonna like blow your socks off. And then lastly, I read a nonfiction book called Romancing Your Brand by Zoe Clark, and I give it 5 stars. It's not a widely read type of book that I can recommend to everyone, but if you are an author, and if you are particularly an author of series, I 100% recommend to read this. I took about 20 pages of notes while I read it. It was so helpful. It really helped me look at what I've written so far and how I could shift things to make my series more marketable, which is awesome. It's a 3-book series. I'm definitely going to read the next 2. I heartily recommend it for any writers. I also gave the book 5 stars because it was just chock full of information that was really useful for me. Those were the 6 books I read in June. I obviously didn't read that much, and I also have a really big July writing month ahead of me, so I'll probably just have another 6 books at the end of this month. We'll see, maybe more. But overall, I think I did pretty fantastic with 3 5-star reads and 2 4.5-star reads. While I wasn't reading a ton, I was reading really great stuff. I hope you had a wonderful June reading month too. And if you've made it to this point in the video, throw me a big sunshine in the comments because I hope we have a July full of sunshine in which we can all sit outside and read. I hope you are in the middle of a good book, about to start reading a good book, or about to start writing a great book. See you soon.